Thank you.
Hi, you guys. So my name is Dawn, and please refer to me as Dawn. Don't call me Miss Jones or ma'am. I don't really like that very much at all. So if you would just refer to me as Dawn, I would appreciate that. So I do work at CADAS, which stands for Counsel for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services. We're located in North Chattanooga. We are a full-service treatment facility. We do inpatient, we do outpatient, and we also have transitional living. We have a co-ed transitional living, which is called Oasis, and they're there for about 3 to 6 months. They are required to get a job. If they have to come to group, they are required to do that as well.
What was the A?
Alcohol.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And then we have our Family Way program, which is for mothers with children. They do have to have custody or be in the process of getting custody of their children in order to be there. It's a 13-month program. They are also required to get a job and other requirements that particular program has them do. The program that I work in is the intensive outpatient program. I have group 4 days a week. We have 2 different outpatient programs. The IOP AM and PM meet 3 days a week, and my program, the Matrix program, meets 4 days a week. My program is specific to stimulant users and chronic relapsers. Most of the people in my group are methamphetamine users and have been using for a very long time. Most of them are IV users. So I deal with a lot of chronic health problems, hepatitis C, HIV, that kind of thing in my group. Matrix is based on schema therapy. Does everybody know what schema therapy is? Any idea what schema therapy might be? No? Okay, so schema therapy is basically, simplistically, patterns. If you look at patterns from the environment that you grew up in, translates into how you behave as an adult. If you grew up in a very dysfunctional, abusive home, then that's what you think is normal. That's what you will seek out as you are an adult. So we look at a lot of those patterns and how it relates to substance use. It's very in-depth, and it can be very traumatic for a lot of people in group, especially if they haven't dealt with those kinds of issues and they're self-medicating, which is what most substance abuse is related to. It's self-medication because they don't want to deal with issues from the past. Okay? So basically, my group meets 3 hours a day, 4 times a week, and we talk about all different types of issues. We talk about trust and abandonment, defectiveness, dependence, subjugation, codependency, enabling, those kinds of things. Currently, I have 16 people in group, which is the max for my group. They don't like my group to be much bigger than that because of the intensive degree of the program, I'll say. I have, most of my people have co-occurring disorders as well. Does everybody know what co-occurring is? You've probably heard it as comorbid. Everybody know what that means? That means they have a mental health issue and a substance abuse issue as well that they're dealing with. I have 2 active schizophrenics in my group right now. Both are unmedicated and are substance abusers. So there's a lot of delusions and hallucinations. They can't stay on task. They don't take social cues well. It's very hard to keep them on task with the rest of the group. I do have 4 people in group that suffer from PTSD as well, related to domestic violence, rape, military service, or prison. A lot of the people that I do have in my group have come from prison. It's not just state probation or county probation. A lot of them do come from federal prison. And that is a little bit different challenge because if they've been in federal prison for a number of years, they get very institutionalized and they don't know how to operate in society. They don't know how to be part of a group. They're very hypervigilant about who's sitting next to them, what they say, what they don't say, who's coming in and out of the door, that kind of thing. So I have to be on my toes all the time. I never know what's going to happen. I have had to have people escorted out because they weren't behaving as they should. Addictive behavior is very unpredictable at times, especially if they are newly into treatment, 30 days or so. their brains are still normalizing, the chemicals are still trying to filter their way out. Detox period can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years before their brain normalizes. Even though they may feel better or haven't used in a year, their body is still trying to adjust, and that normal brain chemistry is trying to reestablish itself as far as dopamine levels and serotonin levels. Because one of the things about, I don't know, do y'all talk specifically about drugs, specific drugs and how they affect the body, or is it just in general as far as the substance use goes?
Well, the chapter we're getting ready to go to is how it affects the body.
Okay, so let's talk about
And
opiates.
each one of them has a particular drug, and they'll discuss, how it affects the body.
Okay, so let's talk about opiates for a second, just for an example. Everybody know what opiates are, pain meds, right? Okay, heroin, Oxycontin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, those kinds of things. Okay, so what happens when someone takes opiates for an extended period of time? It overrides their pain receptors in their brain, okay? It's 5 times more powerful than the pain receptors we have in our body naturally, okay? So when someone is detoxing off opiates, they get really, really ill, like they have the flu, like the worst case of the flu you would ever want to have. It hurts to blink your eyes because the natural opiates that we have in our body are basically don't know what to do. They're basically non-existent. So when you have someone who's coming off opiates and they have to go through a detox period, 9 times out of 10 they will come through our inpatient program. So when you have someone who's detoxing off of opiates, they're sick, they may be nauseous, vomiting, they can't hold their eyes open. It hurts them to sit in a chair because their joints physically ache from the detox process, okay? So their pain level never returns. Like, say you and I, we have a pretty good pain tolerance, right? We stump our toe, we fall down, skin our knee, whatever, we're all right. We just rub some dirt on it, move on, right? People that are withdrawing from opiates cannot do that. I mean, it's physically debilitating to them because their pain tolerance never comes back to the way it should be, okay? Now with benzos, everybody know what benzos are? Xanax, Klonopins, Valiums, okay? So benzos are the same way. Detoxing from benzos, you can have seizures. They have to go through a detox process also. They have to be medically monitored when they're coming off of benzos. And a lot of the times, and this is very dangerous, a lot of the people that come into my group have used opiates and benzos together, which is deadly. Okay, that can kill you. First time can kill you because it'll stop your heart. I mean, they're depressing your system to the point where you forget to breathe, basically. Okay. So I do have a lot of that in my group. The main drug that I see in my group is meth. It is quick and easy to make. It's readily available. You can get it anywhere. You can make it on your drive to school. I mean, it's that easy to do. It's what they call shake and bake. They can do it in a 20-ounce water bottle right there on the way to school. If they have the stuff, they make it anywhere, anytime. There's no detox from meth, but the side effects to meth are obviously hallucinations and paranoia, and the physical effects. It basically eats your skin away. It will eat you from the inside out. That's why you see, if you've ever seen pictures of people that are doing meth, before and after pictures, they have good color, they look full. If they've been doing meth for a while, their cheeks get sunken in, their teeth start to fall out because the chemicals that are in meth physically eat you from the inside out, okay? So I have a lot of meth use. Normally people that use meth have ADD, ADHD, something like that. And they use it because they say that it makes them feel normal, okay? They'll abuse Adderall, or they try to abuse Vyvanse, but it's a non-stimulant, so it doesn't do what they want it to do, or they think they want it to. A lot of it is psychological. It's just the routine and the ritual of taking it. My group is basically like having a room full of 5-year-olds who can't sit still. I mean, that's really what it is. Even though they're coming off meth, they still have the ADD or ADHD that they're working with, and we will not prescribe any narcotics for them. They will have to take a non-stimulant like Strattera, and most of them don't want to do that because they don't get the same feeling from that, okay? So my group is always very active, very interactive, very engaging, because I have to keep them busy or they won't stay focused. like I said, it's like dealing with a room full of toddlers sometimes, that they're bouncing all over the place. You have to constantly redirect them. We talk a lot about the trauma that they have been through. Sexual abuse is very common, especially as children. We talk about domestic violence. I have 3 women in my group right now that were victims of domestic violence, pretty severe domestic violence. One of them was almost killed from her significant other. So we talk about those things. You have to know when to stop pushing. You can push them to a point, but you have to know where that cutoff is, because you don't want to push them too far to where it creates other issues. They're still very fragile coming into my group. A lot of them maybe have come straight from jail. So they are still trying to adjust to their surroundings, and now they're in this group full of strange people, and here's this person asking me all these questions, and why is she talking to me like that, and why does she want to know my business, kind of thing. So it's about building trust with the group. They have to trust me just like I have to trust them. Where my office is, CADAS used to be a hospital years and years and years ago, and so where my office is, I'm on the back side of the building away from everybody else. The only thing that's where I'm at is the cafeteria. So I'm pretty much secluded over there. So I have to be on my toes all the time about they don't get to bring backpacks to group. They don't get to bring their purses, no jackets, nothing like that where they could hide a weapon. And it has happened. We have had to escort people off the property for bringing weapons into group, which is never a fun thing. I'm just going to tell you, that's never fun when I have to take a weapon for somebody. And I have had to do that in the past. And you have to be very non-confrontational at that point, especially if they are on their antipsychotic meds and then stopped them. That can cause a lot of issues as well, so they're not rational at all. Any questions so far? No? Yes?
So, what you do is kind of help them transition from being drug users to
Mm-hmm.
and that the group activities alone that the
The percentage rate is about 12% last time we got reports. What we do is it's cognitive behavioral therapy. We try to help them to see the irrational or unhealthy thought patterns that they have related to society or life in general, or dealing with emotions or feelings or that kind of thing. It's a 12-step based program. Do you guys know what the 12 steps are? Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, now there's Crystal Meth Anonymous and Marijuana Anonymous, and there's like over 200 different support groups in the area for all different anonymous types of things. Anything that you can find in the DSM, there's a support group for, okay? Everybody know what DSM is? DSM-5? It's the statistical manual that we use to diagnose mental health and substance use disorders. Anything that you can think of as a disorder is in that book. There is, to me, there's a caffeine use disorder now, and I don't have a problem with caffeine. Coffee is great, right? We all love coffee, but there's a caffeine use disorder in the DSM now, and a nicotine use disorder for those of you that smoke. There's a nicotine use disorder in the DSM now. But we use that with the 12-step program. They are required to go to 12-step meetings every week. Depending on if they're just in my group, they have to do 3 meetings a week. If they are in one of our halfway houses, transitional living, they have to do 7 a week. If they are part of drug court as well, which a lot of them are, then they are required to do like 12 or 14 a week. It just depends on what other programs they're involved in. Getting them connected to a healthy support group, NAA, NA, CMA, MA, whatever they choose to go to help build those healthy relationships, to have a support system, to show them that they don't have to use drugs and alcohol to maintain a normal life. And normal is subjective. Everybody's normal is different, right? What I consider normal, you guys might not consider normal. But not to have to depend on substances to get you up out of bed every day and to get through the day, and hopefully not occur any more new charges than what you already have, and and that kind of thing. But it's about 12%. If they stay connected to their recovery community, it may be a little bit higher that, but average is about 12%.
So are there people who start using in jail?
Yes. There are more drugs in jail than there are on the street. Does everybody know that? There are more drugs in jail than there are on the street. There are more drugs in the military than there are in jail. Yeah. It's easy to get in and out. Nobody drug tests them in jail. Nobody really pays attention to what they're there for. They're so overcrowded, you know. They just really don't. Some of them will get into trouble, get arrested, go to jail, continue to use, and the first time they haven't used is when they come to treatment. We have people that use in treatment. You know, I have people all the time that come to group high and that I have to send out because they can't be on property that way. They're not rational, they're not logical. There's, you know, you cannot have a conversation with them, especially if they're using meth. So it's sort of a fine line about using, you know, especially if they're in our transitional living program. They have the freedom to go off property and come back. So what's to keep them from using once they leave property? The support network, that's what we hope, is that they're around positive, healthy, supportive people, that they get connected to that they don't need to turn to drugs and alcohol. I've been at CADAS right at 3 years, and I've probably seen 25 to 30 people come back through more than once. So it really just depends on their motivation and their focus. A lot of it comes down to legal charges, and they will tell you, I've got 16 years paper hanging over my head. I can't use. If I use again, I'm going to federal prison. And federal prison is not a place any of us want to be. It's not conducive to their recovery, and it's not going to help them at all. It's just not. I had a gentleman in my group. I also do a federal group once a week, a federal probation group, which the dynamic is a little bit different. They're coming out of federal prison. A lot of them have been locked up for a very long time. They don't know what cell phones are. They don't know what debit cards are. They have a hard time operating in our society. So that dynamic is a little bit different. And they'll tell you, I don't know what this is. They gave me a debit card to get gas, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. So you kind of have to walk them through that process. Those guys go anywhere from, I have one guy in my group that has a murder charge, that served time for murder, down to manufacturing large amounts of methamphetamine. And the drug laws they have no bend on meth. I mean, for crack, you know, back in the 80s it was crack is a big deal. Now it's meth. They have no bend on meth at all. I mean, it is serious federal prison time if you get caught with meth. So the range of charges go anywhere from murder to, you know, manufacturing. I have one guy in my group who is federal. He was in my matrix group, but he was a federal because he came out of inpatient. And he had co-occurring disorders and decided it was a good idea for him to come off of his medicine. And I watched the spiral. I watched him deteriorate over a period of probably 5 days. And part of my job is I have to notify probation officers when they don't hold up to their end of the deal. It's not a part of my job that I like to do because I know the end result of that. They issued a warrant, they violated him, he's going back to federal prison. Do I think federal prison is where he needs to be? Absolutely not. It will not serve him any purpose at all to go back to federal prison because he needs to be in treatment. He needs to be in a structured, long-term environment. But I don't get to make that call. And that's part of my job that sucks. I'm just going to be honest with you. That part of my job sucks, that I have to call a probation officer and say, this person is using again, or this person has violated probation. Even if they don't come to group, they get violated. I mean, it's the slightest little thing. The federal laws are so strict about what they can and can't do and what they're supposed to do. If they don't show up for group, they can go back to federal prison and serve the rest of whatever time they were sentenced to. They have programs in prison, RDAT and ADAT, which are drug treatment programs in prison that a lot of them have to go through, and then they will send them into CADAS as part of that. Bless you. And it's a very fine line, and a lot of them will tell you, I can do prison standing on my head, I don't want to do treatment. I can lay down for 6 years. It's not a problem. I don't want to do treatment. And they don't want to do treatment because it's hard. Treatment is hard. They have to look at themselves. They have to look at maybe past traumatic history. They have to learn to deal with their feelings. And everybody knows feelings suck. They'll tell you that in my group. Feelings suck. We don't want to talk about feelings. But we all have feelings. We have feelings for a reason. Why do we have feelings? It's what makes us human. We're compassionate and empathetic and caring and loving. And maybe they missed those when they were younger. Maybe they didn't get that from the home environment. So they don't know how to deal with all of that once their brain starts to normalize. And oh my gosh, now I have this flood of feelings. What am I supposed to do with them? What am I supposed to do with them? And they'll tell you it's easy in prison because they know exactly what's expected. Somebody tells them when to get up. Somebody tells them when to eat, when to shower. If they get their meds, they go to the pill line. They have their rec time, and then they go to bed, and then they get up, do it all over again. It's very structured in prison. They know what to do. It's the outside they have a problem with because they're left to their own devices. And if they've been locked up for a long time, everything's changed and they don't know what to do. So I deal with that a lot, as well as in group, is to help reintegrate them back into society. I had a gentleman come to me the other day and hand me his cell phone, and he's like, I don't know what to do with this. What am I supposed to do with this? I can hit this button when it rings, and I can take the call, but other than that, I don't know what to do with it. What do I need to do with it? Right now, you don't need to do anything with it. Nothing. You just hit the green button and say hello. That's all you need to do. That's it. He was very overwhelmed learning to deal with things. Luckily, he's in my federal group, and there's only about 5 people in there. So they get real overwhelmed when they don't know what's happening or who the people are. If there's a lot of people around, a lot of federal guys are real jumpy about that. We have women in group that come out of federal prison, and that's a totally different dynamic. Especially if they have children and they're trying to reconnect with their children. Or I have one girl in my group right now, came out of, I think she was just in county jail. I don't think she was in federal prison. And she was gone for a long time. Her son is 9 years old, and she doesn't understand why her son doesn't want to have anything to do with her. Well, number one, he doesn't know who you are because the last time he saw you, you were high. So there's no bond there. They don't have that mother-son bond. So she gets really frustrated. That's her main focus. I can stay clean. I need to reconnect with my son. Well, how many times have you been in treatment? Well, 3. So you can't stay clean. So what do we need to do to get you there? What are you missing? What do you need? What support do you need? Is there a mental health issue that we need to look into? What do we need to do to make you okay so you can have that bond with your child? They will focus on everything but treatment when they come into treatment. You know, I need to get my kids, I need to get a house, I need to get a job, I need to do all these things. Well, you can't maintain that if you continue to use drugs and alcohol, right? I mean, it might be good for a while, but it's not going to last forever, right? So any other questions? Any questions so far? No? Okay. So anything else that you guys want to know about my group, what we talk about? My group has assignments that they have to do every day. They don't particularly care to do those assignments, and then I ask them to present the assignments to the group. And those assignments cover things like trust and truthfulness and guilt and shame, compulsive behaviors, addictive behaviors. They have to do a relapse prevention plan. They have to tell me what they're going to do once they complete the program to stay sober. They have to tell their life story in my group. And that can be very difficult when they are sitting in a room full of people and they recount everything that they've done. How they grew up, if there was abuse, what got them arrested, you know, what charges do they have. I have one guy in my group that has over 16 felonies. 2 of them are attempted murder charges. And he struggles. He's like, you know, I don't want people to judge me. Well, if you hadn't been using, would you have made the same decisions? No, you wouldn't have. You wouldn't have made those decisions. But talking about those things makes it tangible to them. You know, oh my gosh, now I need to look at my behavior. What do I need to do to change my behavior? So by telling their story, it helps them to see what they need to do to change, to become active, productive citizens. One of the challenges he runs into is finding a job. People don't want to hire people with felonies, especially assault felonies. Theft is another big deal. People won't hire you if you have theft charges, you know. So they struggle reintegrating back into society, trying to find a job. If they can't find a legal job, as they call it, I can just go back to doing what I was doing before because I was making all kinds of money. I had houses and cars and all these things. But how long did that last? Didn't last very long. How long did you spend in prison? Was it worth it? I mean, you got to weigh it out, right? So they struggle trying to maintain normal society like we do. They don't, if they do get jobs, they're very low paying jobs. They can't afford to live on their own. They can't afford to get their driver's license back. Most of them don't have driver's license because they got taken when they got arrested for whatever reasons, fines, they got revoked, they were driving under the influence, whatever. So they have all these things that are compounding on top of trying to get clean. I mean, think about the things that you have to do every day. You get up, you come to school, maybe you go to work, then you have homework. Some of you have children or don't have children. You have dogs. It's just the same as having a child. You still have to take care of the dog. So you have all of these things, and we think, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. How do I manage this all by myself? How do I do this? Put yourself in their shoes. They're coming out of jail. They're coming out of treatment. Now they have to get a job, and oh my gosh, I have this criminal record, and I can't get a job. So what do? What are their options at that point when they can't get a job? Well, their option is, well, I'll just go get high, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. I don't have to think about all this if I get high. Right? And I can stay high. I can be on the run. They didn't catch me last time for 6 months. I can be on the run for 6 months before they catch me. And then I can go back to prison and it'll be okay because I'll get fed every day and I have a place to sleep every day. I don't have to worry about sleeping outside, which a lot of them are homeless. They sleep in cars. They bounce from place to place. They sleep in the park. They sleep under the bridge. Those are very real things for them. And a lot of them are totally comfortable operating on the street. I have one gentleman in federal group who lived in the woods in a tent, and once he got into trouble and came out of federal prison, they require him to live in a house. He said, that's the most awful thing I've ever had to do is live inside. Why can't I just live outside of my tent? But he has to have a physical address for probation. They have to have somewhere to come and be able to check on him. He's also a registered sex offender, so they have to know where he is at all times, right? And he says, I just want to live in a tent. I was fine living on the street. Well, no, not really. You weren't really fine. Because now look at all these things that have happened. But that's the way they think. They don't see anything wrong with the behavior as long as they're not hurting someone else. But they don't realize that they're hurting themselves as well, you know. And it can be tough. It can be tough to watch someone go through that. That's their end result. I could just do this and everything will be okay. So that, yes?
So do you help them find a job or find a house? Or can you send them to someone to help them find
Yes. I do. That is also part of my job is case management. I keep a running list. I have a whiteboard about the size of this board in my office, and one whole side of it is jobs. I will call local employers and say, hey, do you hire people that have felonies? Do you this, do you that? And they'll tell me yes or no straight up. So I keep a list on my board for them and say, hey, these places are hiring. They hire felons. It doesn't matter what the charges are. They'll work with you, that kind of thing. I do refer to housing. If we can get them into our transitional living programs, that's what we would like to do. But there are other places in town, like through Sethra. Do you guys have Sethra up here? Because it's Bradley County. It's maybe something different up here, is it? Sethra is transportation services for people that don't have cars. They're community service. They'll provide transportation. They also have a housing program where they'll provide housing for people that are coming out of jail or prison and that kind of thing. I refer a lot to the trauma therapists. I keep a running list of community resources, so when someone says to me, hey, I'm struggling with this, okay, I can help you with that. The mom in me wants to do it all for them, but I need to empower them to do it on their own. And a lot of times they're really sketchy about it because, again, it's meeting new people, going into a new environment. Maybe they haven't had a job interview in 15 or 16 years. Maybe they haven't worked, because they were on their street using. So we talk about, in one-on-one sessions, we talk about maybe interviewing skills, what to say. I always tell them, you can tell anything but not everything, right? You're not going to go in and spill your whole life story to somebody that you're doing an interview with and kind of catch them off guard and go, oh my God, what do you say to that? So we do work a lot on those things. I wish that CADAS had an employment counselor on campus that would teach classes on interviewing skills and how to do a resume, because they don't know how to do those things. But there are community resources that will do that for them, that will help them. It takes a village sometimes, to get them, even if it's just, flipping burgers at cheeseburger, then that's awesome, because they have a job now. They have something to do other than, maybe sleeping under the bridge or stealing from the gas station or whatever to survive. But yes, I do connect them to a lot of community resources. There are a lot of agencies that are under the United Way umbrella that will service. It's all about calling and asking. That's part of the job of a social worker, or is to empower them to do that and connect them to those resources. Yes, sir.
Did you state in the beginning what your degree or education is?
I have a degree in psychology. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm all about why your brain works like it does. I want to know what you're thinking. I do. I'm the why. I have these questions that I ask in group. We have a question of the day when we do group check-in. How are you feeling? On a scale of 1 to 10, what word or phrase describes you today? And one of the questions I ask is, what letter of the alphabet describes you? And mine is always the why, because I want to know why. Why did you do that? Why do you think like that? Where did that come from? Those kinds of things. So those are just fun little icebreakers that I ask in group to kind of get the group talking. If you can get them talking, then they won't stop, but it's getting them there. It all comes down to trust. Any other questions? Very quiet group. I'm not used to this. My group is very talkative.
Talk about one of the assignments that you give.
Assignments. So one of the assignments that I give, one of the first assignments that I give is internal and external triggers. And it's asking them to identify what triggers them to use. Is it just being around people that use? Is it parties? Is it concerts? Is it festivals? Is it my family? What? Those are external triggers. Internal triggers are emotions and feelings. When I'm sad, when I'm lonely, when I'm frustrated, when I'm confused, identifying what things they think makes them use. They have to do steps 1 through 4 in my group, the first 4 steps in AA. Are you guys familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous at all? I mean, it's not just meetings. There's a whole 12-step program that is involved in that. So one of the first steps is acknowledging that their life has become unmanageable and that they are powerless over drugs and alcohol. That's one of the first assignments they do. It's step 1, actually, and it asks them how drugs and alcohol have affected their life, legally, socially, psychologically and emotionally, employment-wise. I need you to tell me how drugs have affected those things for you. Legally, I'm on paper for 15 years. I served 13 years in prison, and I'm still on paper for 15 years. So that's how it affected me legally. Socially, I didn't know who my friends were. The only friends that I had were the people that I used with. And normally, those are not your friends. They're just there because you got good dope. I mean, that's really what it is. That's what it comes down to. Emotionally, numbed my feelings. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't have to feel anything, because when I did start to feel bad, I could just get high and then all of that would go away. I start to come down, start to feel a little bad, that'll go away if I get high again. So they numbed their feelings. Their families may have cut them off. Tough love. They can't come around. Maybe they've stolen from their family, so their family won't let them come around. There's no relationship. Maybe they've lost their children. And that happens a lot. I would say probably about 50% of the people that I've come in contact with have DCS involvement, that their children have been taken and they're trying to get their children back, or their parental rights have been terminated. They did not get the option. The court terminated their rights because of their activities. Other assignments we do are identifying other addictive behavior. So once they come into treatment and they're no longer using drugs and alcohol, how does that spill over into other behaviors? What would you guys think would be some other addictive behaviors? Eating, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else? Exercise, right? So the top 2 things that replace drug and alcohol are sex and food. Okay? So we talk a lot about paying attention to, maybe you were smoking 1 pack a day and now you're smoking 5 packs a day. Okay? Or maybe you are having a ridiculous amount of unprotected sex with strangers. What do food and sex do? Why would those two replace drugs and alcohol?
Feel good.
They feel good. They affect the same pleasure centers in your brain that drugs and alcohol do. Mm-hmm. Eat that good piece of cheesecake and you feel great. You're like, oh my gosh, that was the best cheesecake I ever had. Right? It's the same feeling they get when they get high. Yep. Yeah. Adrenaline is another one. Risky behaviors, skydiving, cliff diving, maybe driving cars too fast, racing trains, that kind of thing. Adrenaline is a huge one that replaces drugs and alcohol. They need that rush. Mm-hmm. What else could be an addictive behavior? People. People can be an addictive behavior. Being caught up in somebody else's stuff. Being in the middle of somebody else's chaos and drama. Because you don't have your own, so now you're going to jump into somebody else's. It's not mine. I'm just listening. I'm just a friend. I'm just listening. But you have all of these people that you're involved with and working on their stuff, not your stuff. Mm-hmm. Bless you. What else would be addictive behavior, do you think? Shopping can be an addictive behavior. Mm-hmm. I've actually met one person who had a shopping addiction that literally gave up their car, their house, everything because they shopped so much. Not that they needed it, it was just the rush that they got from buying it. And then 2 or 3 hours later, that rush was gone, so I need to go buy something else. That's how they got their high. And literally lost everything because they had spent so much money on shopping. Everything they got went to shopping. Just a pack of gum. Could be just a pack of gum. But they needed that high, and that's how they did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's an eye-opening experience. Addiction is not indicative of one social class. It's not. It is. We've had architects come through my group, very well off, very wealthy, nice car, can't stay sober. He can't go to a business meeting because he's drunk all the time. How can you sit in front of a client when you are slurring your words and you can't put a thought together? And then we've had people that are homeless. It's cross culture. It goes everywhere. It's not. It's a non-discriminant. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? How am I doing?
Does faith or can faith be involved in the group program since it's a federal program or state program?
We cannot discuss religion, but we do focus on spirituality. And spirituality being a connection to whatever higher power they subscribe to. But we do not talk about religion. That we can't do that. It's against federal statutes for us to talk about religion. But the 12-step program is focused on a spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. And if it's, God and church, then that's great. I know that some people in the program practice Buddhism. Some people are Wicca. Some people say nature is their higher power. So whatever they find that connection to, but they will not, federal law mandates that we can't subscribe to one religious practice. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people that I've come in contact with did grow up in church and do have a very strong faith, and that's where a lot of guilt comes from, is because they have gone against the beliefs that they grew up in. So they feel like they've let not only their families down, but they've let God down as well. And then that's a huge thing for them. And some of them are very angry at God. Why did you let this happen to me? Why did you let that trauma happen to me that led me into using drugs and alcohol? So it's working through that as well. A lot of times they have turned away from religion because of past experiences. So they're trying to find their way back to it. Bless you. Yes?
Is there a percentage of success? Like, how many people do you see repeat the program? Or how many people are successful?
It's really hard to keep. National average says about 12% the last time that I saw any statistics
Successful or come back?
that are successful. I have seen 20 to 30 people come back through the program multiple times since I've been there. And again, it all comes down to motivation. Do they want to stay sober? Or, did they go back to using or just off the grid again? Or did they get locked up somewhere else and are not in our system, so we wouldn't know that? Mm-hmm. Those numbers are very hard to track. Yes, sir.
How long is the program and how many times is it recommended that someone goes through this?
So my program is 26 sessions, which is about 6.5 weeks. The other two outpatient programs are only 16 sessions, and they attend those 3 days a week. And mine, they attend 4 days a week. They get a certificate.
Who goes to what?
I'm
Is
sorry.
it court mandated who goes to what? Who determines gets what service?
That really depends. Sometimes the court will mandate it. We work a lot with drug court, Hamilton County Drug Court, and they will mandate depending on if they're methamphetamine users, they come to my group because that's what my group is specifically for. If it's something else, they may go to one of the other two outpatient programs. If the court feels like they need to be inpatient first, they will order them to inpatient and then to an outpatient program. To answer your question about how many times they come through, that's really, I've seen people that have come through multiple times since I've been there. It's really up to their legal referrals. If the legal system would rather them come through treatment than to lock them up. But if they've been through treatment 5 times and it's still an issue, then they're not going to give them another opportunity. So it really depends. Some probation officers are very lenient and will work with them, and some are just cut and dried. This is it. You're going back to jail. I'm not going to do this again. So it's really up to the legal referral. As far as direct admits, they can come back as many times as they want, or need to. If they're struggling and they've relapsed and are using again, and then they come back and say, okay, I need to come through this again. There have been cases where they have said no, they can't come back through the program, that they feel like the admissions department feels like that we have offered them everything that we could, that it's not beneficial for either one of us for them to come back through the program. So at that point, they would say no and refer them to a long-term facility, 6 months to a year. Mm-hmm.
Do the hospitals sometimes refer them to you? Like if someone has had medical treatment into the emergency room because...
Not from the hospital. From Moccasin Bend, yes. If the hospital transports to Moccasin Bend, and then Moccasin Bend will refer to us. We work a lot with community mental health services. Mm-hmm.
Is it paid for by the patient or by federal?
We get state and federal funding, so if they don't have health insurance, then they can get a state grant to pay for it. We also have several scholarships that are available. With the federal program, the feds pay for that. If they're in drug court will pay for a percentage of it, and then that will roll over to state grant. We also accept self-pay and insurance. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? We do have a videotape, so if you want to go back to check your notes or anything. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll open it.
You're welcome.